Hi, I'm Zoe Hughes, and this is an animation to shed light on abuse in sport. There are 5 main types of abuse: physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental or emotional abuse, neglect, and bullying. Here are some statistics on abuse in the UK. This presentation will mainly focus on sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is based upon an abuse of power and trust. It is a sexualized behavior towards an individual or group. It can either be verbal, non-verbal, or physical. It can also include a process called grooming. The first step of grooming is targeting a potential victim. The abuser observes which athlete is more vulnerable. They find occasions to test out the vulnerability and the secrecy of the potential victim. The second stage of grooming is building a relationship and the trust of the athlete. The abuser listens and comforts the child. They consistently support and spend time with the victim. They make them feel special. The third stage of grooming is developing isolation and control of the child's life. The abuser breaks down relationship between the victim's family and friends so that the victim only relies on them. The final stage of grooming is the initiation of sexual abuse. The abuser slowly breaks down sexual boundaries, starting with an inappropriate touch here and there, and it gradually gets worse. They bribe the cooperation, saying that the athlete owes them. They offer protection, saying it's our little secret. They tell the victim that no one will believe them. Research shows 1 in 5 children in Europe are victims from a form of abuse. It is estimated in 70 to 85% of cases of sexual abuse that the abuser is someone the child knows and trusts. Research in Australia found that out of 31% of females and 21% of male athletes who have reported sexual abuse, up to 41% of females and 29% of males were sexually abused in a sport environment. The #MeToo campaign has taken over social media. It reflects the magnitude of sexual assault. Women from all over the world are sharing their story of sexual assault or harassment. So far, 500,000 women have tweeted Me Too. Larry Nassar is a former USA Olympic doctor. It has been reported that he abused 156 women that he was meant to be treating. It is unclear when he started to abuse his victims, although the first allegations date back to 1994. In August 2016, Indianapolis Star published allegations made against him when the first victim stepped forward. He was sentenced for 60 years in jail after child abuse images were found on his computer in November. He then pleaded guilty to sexually abusing females. Investigations have been launched on USA Gymnastics on the cover-ups that happened within, causing 3 board members to quit. Larry Nassar was sentenced to 175 years in prison. Paul Hickson is a former British Olympic swimming coach who sexually abused teenagers in his elite squad. Victims were too afraid to speak out. The abuse came to light as police officers overheard victims talking about the abuse. He was convicted for 15 out of 17 charges of sexual assault. Hickson denied all accusations. He claimed the athletes were fantasizing about having sex with him. He was found guilty of raping 2 teenagers and indecently assaulting others. He was given 17 years. Barry Bennell was a junior football coach and a youth scout. He repeatedly abused boys, some up to 100 times. He was called the Pied Piper, as he convinced young footballers he could make their dreams come true. It was in the US his crimes first came to light. In 1994, he was given 4 years in prison for sexually abusing a teenage boy. He was then arrested in the UK and sentenced for 9 years for 23 counts of sexual abuse. In 2016, Andy Woodward spoke out about his abuse, causing another police investigation to open up as more victims of his abuse came forward. Once again, Bennell found himself in court, facing his victims. He was found guilty of 43 offences and given 31 years in prison. The judge described him as the devil incarnated. Athletes at risk: disabled athletes, LGBT athletes, elite athletes who are on the brink of success and will do anything to succeed, and athletes with a lack of protection, such as a lack of child protection policies, procedures, education and training. Here are some signs that an athlete is being abused. Policies put in place by the Child Protection in Sports Unit or the CPSU. DBS checks are for coaches and adults who are left alone with the children, while self-declaration forms are for those who work alongside the coaches and are not left alone. These checks look at volunteers' criminal history to see if they are allowed to work with children. All coaches or coaching assistants should have been trained in their sport or discipline. This is vital so that coaches are informed on what training is suitable for their age groups. All volunteers should have been educated on safeguarding in the club and for young athletes in general. Procedures should be put in place with regards to child protection. They should include a step-by-step guidance of what action to take if there are concerns for a child's welfare. Policies are only effective if people are aware of them. Children should be made aware of their rights to be safe, and everyone should know who their safeguarding officer is. Tom is a 12-year-old boy. He is a talented 800-metre runner and hopes to win a medal at nationals. He trains 3 times a week with a training group and his coach John. John gives him lots of encouragement and tells him he needs to have more one-to-one training sessions in order to improve. John holds the one-to-one session at his home in the evening. He also drives Tom home from training alone. After training one evening, John takes Tom to his room and sexually abuses him. He says to Tom that Tom owes him for all of the coaching he does. He tells Tom to keep it a secret. What you should do to protect yourself. You should understand your rights and know that adults shouldn't make you feel uncomfortable. You should know who your safeguard officer is in case you have to report something. You should look out for others in the club. And if someone makes you feel uncomfortable, you should challenge them or tell an adult. If you are worried about a teammate or training partner, you should tell an adult you trust about your concerns. You need to understand that it's not your fault that something has happened to them. And if you feel like what you have seen has affected you, then you should seek help. Most importantly, don't be afraid to speak out. If you do have concerns or you are suffering from abuse, then ring Childline.